So welcome everyone. Welcome to another session of our Systems Mapping and Co-Design Lab. I'll introduce our speaker and facilitator for today in just a couple of minutes. But just to have a few words about this space, we are, simply called the lab, and we try to organize a space for discussing about visual participatory applications of systems thinking, in particular for practice, for managers, innovators, entrepreneurs that span across a number of different sectors. Next slide. This is the elegant version of the six founders of the lab. We officially started last year. We are all people that have co-worked in different functions in the past, especially in academia, but with a strong interest of really crossing the boundaries between theory and practice. So as you can see, Carlo, myself, Maria, Ramin, Rob, and Timothy, we were engaged in the past 10 years into a number of projects that where we developed and that required visual applications and the participatory applications of systems thinking in a number of ways. We wanted to keep in touch with each other, but then we realized that the best form to do that was not just or emails over the six of us, but actually as an open community. So that's how the lab actually started. So we are informal, we are not registered, we are nonprofit. We have a bias towards learning, so we don't mind to take a little bit more time sometimes to go deeper into reflection. And we really much enjoy distributed experimentation, which with that we mean doing our small scale experiments in different parts of the world and in different communities, and then learn from each other and try out different things and see how they work. We enjoy, for that reason, as you can imagine, also action research very much. And next slide. For today, in particular, we have the honor of having Anna Margolis with us. She's completing, or she's in the process of wrapping up her PhD at University of Hamburg. She has a lot of experience both in the corporate world and in cross-sector social interactions between multiple stakeholders, including academia, companies, the public sector, and civil society. And she has been developing practical tools in, during her PhD and probably also before, and she will tell us more about that, of course. And interesting fact, she's actually based with me in Montpellier at the moment, visiting our Montpellier Business School. So that's all from my side. And Anna, the floor is yours, and we are so excited to have you with us today.
Yeah, thank you, Domenico. And I'm very happy to be in Montpellier, even though I find it's not very conducive for work because it's warm, it has a wonderful beach and a very nice old town. So it's like, it has a lot of distractions, this place, but I try to still focus and bear with me today. I'm happy to see all of you here, and there are still a few people joining. So if I'm distracted for a short moment, it's because I'm letting people in. Our agenda for today will be, we do a brief introduction for the next sort of 10 minutes, and then we'll start into the workshop part, because I would like to show you to you today, not only what I do, but also let you experience a bit of how you can actually use the methods I'm applying. Yeah, I've been trying to wrap up my PhD now for the last 2 years. It takes a while because I enjoy working with practitioners and co-developing with practitioners. And as we go along, we discover new challenges and new ideas. So it's always a journey. And then for the last 20 minutes, we will return to our plenum and have a reflection and discussion on how what we have experienced today connects to your work and how we could leverage it together, maybe. So let's keep it rolling. I tend to start my presentations with a quiz because the environment I'm researching is circular economy. And circular economy on the outside seems like a very simple proposition. It's saying, okay, let's just cycle all those resources, all those materials, all those products. Let's use them more often, more intensively, and we'll be good, right? And once we sort of try to get into the depths of it, we realize it's actually not so simple. And so that's why I like to start with a quiz to give you a bit of a feeling of my environment. The first question towards all of you is what you see here on the screen are 6 solutions, which all say that they are highly sustainable and highly circular solutions for drinks and beverages. So you can use the chat and just type the number from 1 to 6. What do you think? Which one is the most sustainable and the most circular? I see 6, 3, 6. More guesses? Okay, I think most of you now are aligned on the 6. Now, one thing that plays a big role in circular economy and sustainability, as you probably all know, is context. So what if number 6 was not available? Because in fact, in most places in this world, outside of the south of France and other places in Europe and North America, we can't drink tap water. So what if your government doesn't provide tap water to you? And you only have option 9 to 5. Which one would you choose? I see 5. 4, 3, 4. Any more guesses? 5 is preferable bottle. Okay, so I think now there's a bit, okay, 2, Garima is for 2. So we can see it's not so simple, right? And probably many of you are thinking of their own context. And depending on the places you travel, the places you know, things are different. For example, number 4, because many of you opted for 4, it is a refillable bottle, but because it's glass, it's so heavy that it's only sustainable if it's transported short distance. But as soon as you transport it long distance, it's actually not such a sustainable solution because there's a lot of CO2 emission. So I'm not going to go into too much depth. Maybe the last question, and then we'll move on. Which one has actually won the German Sustainability Award? I see a few people for 2. Any more guesses? 5. Domenico, have you done the quiz before?
Maybe.
And TJ is saying 3 because aluminium is circular and it can be recycled indefinitely. And we have 4. So we have actually all the guesses. It was number 5. In fact, it was number 5 because it's a bottle made from recyclates and it has a cap attached. This is sort of the solution the EU is currently trying to promote. I won't take any position because I'm not here to promote any of those. It highly depends on your context. So that's just one takeaway as we move on with the workshop. Think about the context for which you are creating. Domenico has just done a great job of introducing me. So I don't think I need to say much more. I've included this picture because it's just a reflection. I often feel that in introduction rounds, you can't really introduce the whole person. You introduce like a reflection of a person. And my interest is really in how to enhance circular ecosystem and how to bring around transformation. Transformation is something I have been doing as a practitioner, is my interest. And I experienced a lot of challenges and a lot of tensions. And that pushed me sort of back into academia, hoping to be able to grasp some of those tensions and to improve my understanding on how to really deal with those projects. I would like to get to know you a bit, and also I would like to get us moving a bit. So what I would like to do for the next couple of minutes is to ask you to sit down and stand up if the statement applies to you. So who is working in systems thinking? Please stand up. Piotr? And Domenico, I can't see everybody on my screen for now, so now I can. Anybody else working on system thinking, with system thinking? You can stand up and remain up so we can see it. Okay. Who's working with co-design approaches and actually using co-design? Marie? TJ, Domenico? Cool. Who out of you, who is working as a consultant, consulting others? Piotr? Domenico, Marie? Anna Marie leaving the room. Do we have people here who are working for a business using maybe systems in a business? Marie and Piotr and Garima? Really nice. And who's working for a public organization, like a government organization, policymakers, but maybe also university? Anna Marie? Marlena? So we have a good mix of consultants, business, public. So who is concerned with sustainability in his or her work? Domenico, Garima, Marlena, TJ, Anna-Marie? Almost everybody in the room, I think. And maybe those who don't have a camera can just wave a hand at us. So you're also involved. And other people who are actually working on circular economy. I see Zach, Marie, Garima. So quite a few. Cool. That's really nice. So circular economy is going to be our context today for this workshop. But in fact, I think what I am doing here could also be applied to other types of systems. And I would be interested exploring towards the end of today if and how this method could also apply outside of circular economy. So let's jump in. I will share with you also the link to Miro because we're going to be working on Miro today. And then when we go into the interactive part of the workshop, please feel free to access Miro and use it. So this workshop I'm going to do today is part of a larger toolkit for developing circular ecosystems. And the complete toolkit is called circularity thinking. The way circularity thinking works is we usually start with thinking about where is there waste in the system, where is there pollution, where do we use too many resources, and then from this understanding of where do we create waste, we move into developing ideas how we could address that waste and prevent it. And from this, we sketch a solution that is usually an ecosystem solution. So it does not only think about consumers or repairs or production, but actually tries to map things from resources and materials through the whole value chain towards use, and also thinking about what happens downstream, how could we cycle those resources more. And then once you have a solution, we can think about how to make this solution happen. So I do have other colleagues who are working more on parts like developing interactions, thinking about what is the role of data, what is the role of value in this system, and which tensions are there between value, data, information flows, material flows. I do have colleagues looking into very specific activities in the value chain. But my part and what we are going to focus on today is really, once we have figured all of those things out, how do we develop an action plan? And that is something I've also brought as a challenge for my practitioner work, because I found that quite often you had an idea for a solution and many people had different ideas, but it was difficult to align on the action. So that's our focus for today. And I don't know who else in this room may be familiar with this situation where you enter a conference room and you come with a solution in mind, and so does the rest. And then when you get into a discussion, you realize actually it's not so simple because your idea of the solution may be very different. And also your idea of what's preventing you from actually getting there may also be very different. And this is a step we are trying to accompany today in collective action planning, to think about how can we attain a solution together. Any questions on this before I move on to the actual method? Let me try and bring you back on. So I can see. No, okay, good. Okay, cool. So the method we are going to do today is called collective action planning. And it's essentially going from a circular idea to a circular action plan. It has 5 steps, which are identifying ecosystem requirements, assessing constraints, defining actions and actors, matching the actions to innovation modes, and finally aligning on an action plan. And what we're going to do today is a fast forward of those 5 steps. So don't expect that we will dive into depth, but I'll try to give you a bit of a feeling of how these steps may work. So those are the 5 steps, and we'll do the fast forward. So it may be a bit hectic at times, and you may feel like, oh, I would have liked to stay in the group longer and discuss more. But then we can always talk about the workshop, how to make that happen. To explain the method to you, I'm going to be using one example, which is related to the quiz we have just shown. We will think about how to go from one-time coffee to go cups towards reusable cups. They seem pretty basic at the beginning, I think. It's just like a cup and you can use it. You can borrow it at supermarkets, cafes, canteens, and you pay a refund and you get your refund back when you return the cup. So it's quite simple, but we will dive into why it may be not so simple to implement and do it. And you will work in your groups on other examples. I'll show to you in a second. So let's move to step 1. Step 1 is identifying ecosystem requirements. And I see that some people actually have free cups at home. This is not good that you have 2 Rosella. Please bring them back to put them back into the system. But I have 2 at home as well. So shame on me as well. So we'll think about identifying ecosystem requirements first. And ecosystem requirements essentially relate to the question, what do we need to do to establish a circular ecosystem? We will do it using a relatively simple system map for the circular economy, which is particularly conducive if you have manufacturing solutions that you want to make more circular, so any physical product. You start here with the space, which is particles and raw materials. You move into this more production-oriented environment where you look into what kind of elements, substances, molecules, materials will be used. And then you move towards parts where you connect things together. So this is parts here. And down here, you have a space where you may put your products together, package them, put them into logistics, retail. Down here, you have your use phase of the finished product. And then you can think about where is waste created, where does the product cease existence, and use those arrows to bring the product back through things like direct reuse down here, reuse, repair, or the larger cycle here, recycling. Let's look at our example to make it easier. So if we take recap, first, before we even start to do anything, we need to do some thinking and designing stuff to develop a business model or to develop an assumption of what the business model could be. Then in a second step, when we think about particles, we need to think about materials. Will it be plastic? Will it be glass? Will it be wood? Whatever it could be. And we want it to look somewhat nice. So we also need to choose colors, glue, surface treatment. And we want them, of course, to be safe and sustainable as well. And down here, when we talk about the product, which is complete, there will actually be a lot of things to do, many requirements. Number 4, we need to find partners. Number 5, we need to adhere to legislation. Number 6, we need to convince consumers, not only the one person in this room, but all of us, to actually use Recap. And we need to convince those consumers to give us the cups back and not to keep them at home. And we, of course, need to organize all the reverse logistics to bring the cups back to us. And of course, even if your product is reusable, at some point it will be so old that it will need to be dumped anyway. And this is when number 9, we need to think about recycling. Can we recycle the old cups to put the materials back in the system? So this is, in a very simplified way, what you would do for a cup. And what I would like you to ask you as a group, we have 14 people now, is to think about other products you may treat in the same way. And I have brought some more examples down here. So let's have a look. So we have four products today that I would like to propose, 4 solutions. One solution is thinking about modular electronics. So you are designing a laptop with interchangeable parts, which you can easily repair and upgrade. That will be group 1, 2 to 3. We are thinking about selling platform for upcycled furniture on our second example, where you're trying to link upcyclers, artists, people who are doing upcycling with buyers. On case 3, we are thinking about refillable cosmetic products. So you want to offer beauty products, but you want to offer them in reusable containers with refill stations. And on number 4, our last case, you would like to establish a tool and equipment library where people can borrow tools, kitchen appliances, and things to be used in student housing or other large houses. I also have brought a few wildcards because usually there are a few participants who already work in circular economy. So is there somebody in the room, maybe just raise your hand, who is actually working on a product and you would like to apply this to your own product, to your own work? If yes, please speak up. Okay, I don't see any hands raised. Then we'll just roll with those 4 cases and no wildcards for today. So I will open up the breakout groups in a few seconds, and you can think about which case is the more interesting for you: modular electronics, selling platforms, refillable cosmetics, or tool and equipment libraries, and join a corresponding group. I think it's nice if we are 3 people per group. So join a breakout room, which doesn't have 3 people in it yet. And then we'll just take it from here. You will find the templates all over here. And the templates are numbered. So this is group 1. And if I zoom out on Miro, you can find group 2, group 3, and so on. The group always has a picture of its product or solution next to it. So here you can see group 4 is selling upcycled furniture. So when you use Miro, try to go there. Other people in the room who have not used Miro before, could you maybe just raise a hand? Because then I would take some time to explain how Miro works. Okay, Zach, perfectly. So Miro is an interactive dashboard which allows you to create sort of a co-design environment, but online, and allows us to be interactive. The most important central function of Miro is down here in the top, in the down right corner, where you can zoom out and zoom in. That is pretty much like Google Maps, and I think all of us use Google Maps. So zoom out and zoom in is very important. If at some point you get lost and you don't know where I am or where your group is, in the top right corner, you see many icons which have A for Anna-Marie, D for Domenico, also an A for me. And you can click on those icons and then you become a stalker and you follow us. So you follow the person who you clicked on, and that helps you to get back into the crowd. And on the left-hand side here, you have a bar which allows you to create text, images, arrows, whatever you like. For today, it's enough if you create sticky notes and use post-its, which you can find here on the left-hand side, and you can choose different colors, which will be important for your workshop. However, today I wanted to keep it simple, so actually I've already created some post-its for you here as well. So you can also use these post-its, or you can create new post-its. So please just feel free to move the post-its here or create some new ones. And you can put the green post-its on the green line here where you put your requirements. So your task for now will be task number 1, which is what do you need to do to establish a circular ecosystem for the solution you have selected. So what do you need to do to establish a circular ecosystem, and where in the system do you need to do it? So you just place the green post-its around. And we will switch rooms a bit to give you a hand if you need help. Any questions before you move to your breakout sessions? We are 12 participants now. So yeah, Christian.
So should we be competent in the field that we select, or can we go into a field that we are not competent in?
I think we're just trying to create like a safe learning environment here. Basically, this is design science. Sometimes I use it with professionals and they really know everything in depth. And sometimes in classes, we just improvise a bit. I've tried to select things which we know a bit about as consumers, at least, so that you won't be completely lost. So maybe you have more learning if you pick a field where you have never been before. But maybe you're working on product service systems and you would like to select a product service system because it's close to your consultancy work. So pick one, the one which speaks to you most. Anna-Marie.
Yeah, I have already announced I have to leave like at 5:02. So is it okay if I join a bigger team? So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think we had a couple of other people. So just then join. If you have to leave, join as a 4th person, because then you may also drop out. And I will create 4 groups. So I think just see if you can assign yourself in a way that works for you. And if we see that there are just too few participants in one room, then we will bring you back and see if we can regroup you.
Ecological one, at least, yeah, the social and ecological, which is kind of probably
okay.
Maybe.
So do we start with the requirements, the requirements of the largest ecosystem, or the tiniest ecosystem? The one that fits like tightly to this.
Yeah.
Would it be easy to do the tiny one first? So we need some kind of system for getting the parts and circulating the parts, some kind of service.
Yes, I think we can go with the tiniest ecosystem. I agree.
Okay, and how do we call that tiniest ecosystem? Technological ecosystem, ecological ecosystem, business model ecosystem.
Maybe business model ecosystem.
You have too many academics in the room, guys. Just go and don't think about the level, because you can sort out the level later.
Okay.
Right.
Just think about it. Just ask yourselves the question, what do I need to do? And then anything that comes to your mind, put it on and don't analyze.
So how about we take a few seconds and we think about what the key...
Yeah. Hi, Anna. I'm so glad you came. We need a bit of clarity, guidance.
So basically, we were discussing how to proceed. If we got it right, it's kind of the step one you described before, right? From business development to recycle old cups.
Yeah.
Is this yet we are asked to do, right?
Let's see. You are.
We're the refillable cosmetic product. Right?
Yeah.
Are you on the Miro board?
Yeah.
Which one are you using? So, which one?
Refillable.
7.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry.
It's the refillable
Yeah, 7.
products.
Okay, but you haven't started writing yet, right?
No.
Okay.
I started to write it on the wrong one. So
okay, sorry. I can ungroup your post-its. I don't know what happens there. And now it takes them individually. So your question is, on refill, I mean, you have a bit of an easier challenge than the rest because there will be some resemblance, maybe, the cups, but then certain things may be very different. For the cups, of course, it's food safety. So food safety is very critical. Here you don't have food, so you're a bit easier, but you can think, I mean, that is, in this case, that is a saloon. So it needs to look very posh for the consumer. But of course, it also needs to be durable. So exactly, you can think about the criteria. And then if you have something like research on consumer perspective, you can think about where would this go in the system, because consumer would normally only face like the ready-made product down here. But if this is specifically research on consumer perspectives on material, so for example, you want to see if your consumer would accept a refillable plastic product or rather glass, then of course you can put it here, but then make it explicit. This is consumer research on materials.
Which stage does that come in the steps, Anna? The constraints?
The constraints is actually the next step.
Oh, okay. So we're still on the first step.
Yeah. So you're still on the first step. And something consumer research could actually also be part of your constraints, but if you already think of it, you can also put it as an action.
But for example, when you said step 1 business model, like what do you mean? Do we need to think about the whole business model?
It's
not step 1, like sub-step.
Yeah. I mean, normally there is something up here, I find, when we think about things, which is almost like, which is the big picture. It can be the overall design. It can be the overall business model. It's your more generic things that is not linked to particles or parts, but it's more the overarching stuff goes up here. And this could be, in your case, I think also the business model, because of course, if now you're selling bottled products, so this example I've took from Henkel, actually my former company, who do offer that kind of refillable bottles to partners in salons. And of course, this is a very different business model in terms of what do you sell, how much do you ask for the bottles, how much do you ask for the shampoo, and where do you make your profit, sort of. But for Recap, I think it was more complicated because Recap is a startup and they didn't really have an ecosystem before. For an existing company like Henkel, for example, it's more tweaking an existing business model and an existing network of customers. So it may be more like a bit easier to do.
So so basically when we use this, then we go, for example, to the 9 sub-steps that you showed before, and then we try to twist it for our specific
exactly
product.
Exactly.
Okay. Good.
But I think you're doing good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So Piotr, I think you're writing things, right?
Yeah, I put some thoughts that I had. So research with the consumer perspective, just to sort of gauge, are they willing?
Hi, I invited you back. I'm not sure if everybody's back yet. Let me see. Yeah, I think now. I know that all of you still need more time. You just started. Because I wanted to invite you, I think I'll give you 5 minutes more time and try to go out of your analytical space more into a divergent space. And because it's a fast forward, maybe try not to overthink one segment, but put at least one green post-it in every part which you find applicable. Maybe there's a part which doesn't apply to you, but put something for consumers, put something for parts, put something for materials, just so we have something to work on the fast forward. Because normally when we facilitate those workshops in a real environment, it takes about a day. So that's why today, of course, yeah, in a very much more experimental environment, it will not be complete. So I'll send you back and I'll give you another 5 minutes and try to be very open and accept any kind of solution, even if it sounds crazy. It doesn't have to be perfect at this stage.
I say goodbye. Danke, Anna. Thanks,
Yeah.
Domenico.
Bye, Marie.
Have a good
Bye,
day.
Marie. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hello. You guys are very performative and you're trying to do everything already.
We like to follow all the rules.
Which is good, but just stick with the green part and we'll have time to go into the other parts later.
Okay.
We're about to open our own tools and equipment library business.
I realize that, which is amazing.
All right. So is there any green parts that we're missing? Students, repair, storage. I don't think so.
No, I think we included everything that was there.
Unless maybe there's something for like university funding or something, like if there's a need to get more
definitely to
tools.
start. Yeah, I think to start you would need so we can put
like
funding.
buy-in. Yeah, like we would need
Yeah.
probably to get university buy-in or funding to start it.
To start.
So welcome back. Okay, I think now everybody's back. I saw that many of you have actually already started on step 2. So while thinking about what to do, you have already sort of thought about constraints. But actually, that's something coming up in this step now. So for the first step, it was really just a question, what is it what is it that we have to set up to get this going, to get this working? And the question for the second part is around ecosystem constraints. So what are challenges, problems, risks, uncertainties, unknowns, or tensions that actually prevent us from doing this? So let's take an example. If you want to develop a business model, of course, there's a lot of uncertainty. You maybe don't know how your customers will react. You don't know about finance. You don't know if all the operational stuff will work. So business model development in the very beginning may be very uncertain in general. You may want, of course, to think about materials. And if your materials address not only your performance criteria, such as durability, and in this example, also food safety, but also environmental criteria because you want to be sustainable. So how to deal with that. Here in our customer part and user part down here, you may have a lack of expertise when it comes to legislation because hygiene in food is very important. And you may have a big question mark, a big uncertainty around finding partners in gastronomy, but also convincing consumers to come on board, but also giving you back the cups. So that may be another question you're facing. And finally, of course, if you want to think about recycling, you may have to ask yourself, is it an open loop? Is it a closed loop? And how do I find partners? So the next step here is just choose a few of the green requirements you have defined. And please spend the next 10 minutes talking about potential challenges, problems, risks, uncertainties, unknowns, and tensions you may be facing when you want to address this specific requirement. Any questions? I know you have already started into this, but just continue. And if you only have for now focused on materials, for example, maybe you put something in your consumer part as well, or in your downstream part here, thinking about cycling so that you have a bit of diversity in your system and you can engage with those different parts of your system as well. And with this, please feel free to return to your breakout rooms.
I got an idea for the second one. We can also put recycling. The ones that can't be used, either we donate it or we put it to recycling.
And maybe it could feed back into the, if we're doing like a student repair system, maybe some of the pieces that are broken could help us with parts to redo other pieces. So if there was like a coffee machine, then students could learn about the parts of it by breaking it down if it was broken, and then seeing what parts are still sustainable to be reused.
Yeah. So would you like to add it? Because I put the repair one here as well.
So I'll put that as in red as
Do you want a bit of a hand with this? With how to navigate the tool? So I think repair would usually come here. Okay, now you don't seem there's a parts link on Miro. If you
the repair would come down.
The repair would come. I could drag it up. It would be around here because this is where if you repair parts, like if you want to take certain parts out and maybe exchange them with other parts. Don't worry about the icons for now because the icons will come in the next step. You're very much ahead of the game. So
you said we're very competitive. We like
you are. So this would be a repair. If you repair it inside your corporate system and exchange parts, repair would come here. And maybe make it very clear what kind of repair. Do you repair it as a company, or is it the student who repairs it? Because if it's a student who fixes it based on instructions, maybe it's a very different requirement. But repair generally would be this one. This one is more oriented towards reuse. Something you're also doing here a lot, right? Because you are having a lot of reuse. Oh, sorry, this is huge. You are doing quite a bit of reuse here because this is your core business model almost. Reuse of appliances, where you will need to probably just purchase appliances and offer them in. You will probably need to think about, you already had storage, right? Storage for tools.
Yes.
Which is probably also, I would say, around here because it's a reusable tool. So they are stored for reuse. And then maybe purchase is somewhere around here because you need to get a lot of tools. And for example, A constraint could be understanding what kind of appliances and tools are actually needed. And then your students would probably be down here, because those are your main clients, and you can think about what is it that they need to do. Which actions do they need?
And they're also the one who is providing us.
Yeah, so you have your suppliers, which is more up here.
Yeah, they are also the suppliers.
So you could think here about something like retailers as partners from who you may buy all the appliances, for example.
We were thinking the students would be the supplier.
Yeah, the students are your customers, no?
They are both.
Or if you
The
or do you want to build, or do you want to build a platform where the students are letting their own device?
You know, a lot of students, when they're leaving their universities, they don't know where to keep stuff. They bought it for their stay, so they can leave it instead of just dropping it and leaving it on
so
the
you
road
want
or
students
something.
to donate.
Yeah.
We're thinking both. So yeah, we would need initial suppliers so that we had inventory, but then we could also add to the inventory if students donate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then you have probably both. And I suppose that both will have very different constraints, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Because maybe if you buy something from retail, so you have both partners in retail. If you have partners in retail, it's maybe standardized equipment. If you have donations, it may be very unstandardized. So think
Right.
about constraints related to standardized versus non-standardized products. To give you an example. But here, of course, you have less cost. So you can do a bit and maybe focus also on what may happen here when students borrow. What kind of constraints do you have here? You may have questions around how does the borrowing scheme work? Do they leave refunds? Do they need to register? How soon do they bring it back? Do they have to clean it? So there could be a whole cluster, I think, of constraints around here.
Yeah.
I leave you to it.
Thank you.
In general, I'd put it at the lower level products finished good. Regarding left or right, I don't think there is much of a difference.
Marlena, what? Yeah.
In your imagination, what kind of laptop is it? Is it like, what's the relevance of the interchangeable parts, like in our imaginary business?
I think it's crucial. I mean, it's absolutely for me, it's just the essence of it. It should be absolutely, the more interchangeable it is, the better. But yeah, that's all I can say based on my knowledge. Christian, what do you think?
Yes, I do agree. So, for instance, this laptop that I have right now that I'm talking from, I upgraded it. It had 8 gigas RAM, and right now it has 32 gigas of RAM. So right now it's much more powerful, but it doesn't allow me. So there is this part of interchange and upgrade that's active in there. But on the other hand, I cannot upgrade the processor on this one, because it's connected to the motherboard, and the motherboard is basically the essence of the laptop. So it's not completely interchangeable. So probably in 1 year I'll have to get rid of it, even if I have it for 5 years.
So it's almost like removing the constraints. Yeah.
Christian did pick a solution he knows a lot about. Maybe to give you attention into the room, guys, because addressing your question, how important is interchange of parts, you can also think about which business model is behind it. Because, for example, Apple did create a phone now, which is completely interchangeable, but only Apple can do the exchange because all the parts are coded in an electronic way. So you have to return your phone to Apple, and then they can reuse the parts and the materials. But as a consumer, you can't. And of course, there are many open systems like Fairphone or Shift which are actually going the opposite way, where as a consumer, you can exchange everything. But to be honest, I also had horrible experience with them as consumer trying to exchange things, which didn't work. So also think about maybe your specific business model. Who is the exchange person and which constraints are linked to? Is it you exchanging as a company? Is it maybe little shops exchanging who are your partners? Or is it the consumer who does it based on videos, how to do it?
I am voting not the extreme one, so that the consumer does it, because I'm not an engineer, and for me it sounds a bit, it's not going to be very serious engineering that this person is able to do. So I think more serious laptop that one could use and change parts would be that this changing of parts would be done by a professional.
Yeah.
What do you think, Christian and Domenico?
I do agree. In France, for example, piggybacking on Fairphone, we had in a few communities of makers that basically disassemble and reassemble as a sort of cooperative, and they also borrow phones to people that cannot afford a Fairphone.
Thank you, guys. Any questions, anything you would like to share in the big cycle? Otherwise, Domenico, you are okay.
No, it's getting. I mean, now it's getting alive. I think we
I
are
think it's
we are
messy.
getting a hang of it.
I would propose that we get to do a 5 minutes break now, so you get to breathe a bit, calm down, get another cup of tea or coffee, and then we'll reconvene around 3:20 to then sort of move into more solution-oriented space, from challenges and problems into how to create action, and then at 4 to our discussion. And
Anna,
Rosella?
can
Sure.
I ask you something? Because I lost the first 10 minutes. I just want, maybe you already shared this, but I just wanted to say, to ask, how did you arrive to this, how did you, how
This
is it?
approach?
The cap. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, we can also talk about in the discussion. This is part of my PhD research, and I'm doing design science research, in systems thinking, and also some design approaches, and essentially looking into sort of literature and what there is in literature on how to go from complex, sort of complex thought to simple action, if you wish, and thinking about how I can operationalize it. So this is a workshop that I have now done and upgraded and approved many times. First, maybe with students to test if basic things work, but then also ongoingly in collaborations with practitioners for like real projects where they're thinking in cross-sector partnerships, how to develop ecosystems or solutions. So it's research-based.
So basically you had I don't know, you had a pilot or MVP of this, and then over time you kind of updated based on students and then practitioners feedback.
Yeah, I've shown it in the beginning if you scroll up on the Miro board. So this is part of a toolkit which is larger, which is called circularity thinking. And circularity thinking is something that the chair with which I'm associated has been developing for a decade. And then my method is something I've been doing now for the last 4 years, where it's a constant back and forth. So I test something with students or sometimes also practitioners, but in small groups and labs like here. And then usually we take it to a real collaboration. For example, we did it with Climate Kick or Wuppertal Institute looking into larger ecosystems. And we learn from this, and then we take it back to the drawing board, and then we upgrade the method. Well, that's how it works. And at some point it becomes part of the toolkit when it's more or less solid.
Okay. And any way I could read more about the steps you went through over time to come up to this point today?
Yeah, I do have a few publications in the background, the stuff that has already been published. But generally the steps follow a design science methodology. We do have a paper soon coming up, which actually has the questions we have been asking ourselves. But there's also a lot of seminal papers on design science. So I'm also happy to share these if this helps you for your work. But design science is essentially always around developing methods or tools and something and validating them in the field, but doing it very much theory ground-based.
Yeah, but it's really interesting. Oh, sorry.
Domenico, would you like to add? How do you develop your methods or tools?
I don't know. I mean, I'm so immersed into this one now that, you know, it's, I would say simply that what we do is a little bit broader, but there are similarities. But I need to think more. Yeah. Whose question was it? Rosella, did you ask?
I was just asking how she developed the tool, basically.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm curious as well. I think for now I'm too focused into figuring out this egg model or avocado model. You know, I don't even remember my own design tools now, so we can talk another time about that.
Nobody has ever called it an avocado, Domenico. The egg has been around a lot.
Uh-huh.
But
Yeah.
it's avocado. I like that.
It makes sense, actually.
Let me look at it again. Yeah, because no, it can be an egg, it's true. It's, or those stripes in the middle. Yeah, maybe it's a bit more avocado than an egg.
It's avocado because it's green now. And I've put the green on the inside. The actual compass is gray, so that's probably why. I'm looking for a link for you, which is a good starting point for Rosella.
Oh, thank you.
Science. That's a good starting point, and it cites a few things. If you really want to dive into depth, I can also share a pre-read of the paper, which we are planning to publish later this year.
I know this paper, actually.
Yeah.
I was just really wondering about your process because I still think when people apply the models, then they have different perspectives and, you know, like.
It is very messy. And a big part of my research has been thinking about how to evaluate it, because it's very difficult to evaluate, I think. So happy to maybe take it up in the last part today in the discussion, because I agree that evaluation of such artifacts is really difficult and messy.
Thank you.
Okay, so if you are back, maybe briefly switch on your camera so we know that you are back.
I did switch my camera on. Can you see me?
Yes, I can see you, Peter. You are just in the middle of my screen, still in space. So I think we are complete, and I'll share Miro again. So for the next part of the workshop, we will now move into solution mode, because thinking about constraints, I would say it's a bit German. German thinks a lot about constraints, I feel, and what can hold us back. And now we will think about actions and actors. So what can actually help us to address these constraints? And I saw that some of you already started with assigning the icons, but don't worry about the icons for now. Just think about the content of your blue post-it. So which concrete action can help you and who needs to do this action? So to give you an example, to define your business model, that was your constraint, the action will be to test, to iterate, to experiment, and that is something the entrepreneur, in this case, Recap founders, will be doing. Here on number 2 and number 3, maybe on number 2, Recap is not the first one to launch such a model. So they could just copy a competitor who is already very sustainable and brags about it on their website, how great their materials are. and they don't need to make it too overly complicated. Maybe if this is not possible, they could also look for certified materials, which already have sustainability, food safety, circularity certifications. Then on our product part, which is a big cluster, right? They want to create engagement. They want to understand how to win partners from gastronomy, cafes, hotels, and how to win consumers. So here, they would maybe do interviews and pilots, maybe start with a few customers, a few cafes, and test what works and what not. And this involves entrepreneurs, but it also involves those pilot customers who really have to come along, participate, and also give feedback on what works and what doesn't. On the legislation side, number 5, where we talked about hygiene legislation, food safety legislation, very important. They may want to hire an expert who really knows a lot about hygiene, because this is something which is important, but there's knowledge and facts in the field. Hopefully, not always with new products, but hopefully. And then we had the field of convincing our consumer to actually join. So you may think about promotion, you may think about building a brand, improving your customer experience, how the cups are borrowed. For example, we have one model in Germany where you just pay a €1 refund. This is Recup. We have another model where first you have to download an app. This is Vital. And there, with the app, you can borrow. Of course, the app one is more difficult because first you have to download something. But the reason Vital is using an app is because they are saying the app actually lets us receive the things back, because you don't pay a refund, but if you haven't returned, but the app can remind you in very friendly, playful way, hey, I want to go back to work, can you return me? And if you haven't returned after 2 weeks, the app will charge you quite a considerable sum of money. So they play a bit with consumer, psychology in terms of getting their stuff back. So this is an example. And with a refund, you just get your euro back, but it has some challenges to it. So there's a tension between getting customers on and getting your cups back. And of course, also here, you will need to think about some actions for reverse logistics in number 8. And that is something with the entrepreneur, with pilot customers, maybe also partners for reverse logistics if you need them. And you will, if you think about recycling, if you actually want your own recycling scheme, you'll have to talk to recyclers, sorters, people who are in this business. So that's your task for the next 10 minutes. Think about your constraints. Pick like maybe 3 or 4 constraints, which you think are very, very central to your business. And then think about actions that you want to do and who should be on board. Any questions before you move? Okay, I'll open the breakout rooms.
Like the big companies that produce, like the companies that produce the creams and soaps and stuff, right?
That's separate, right? Because I can think of we will immediately go and speak with the producers of cosmetics, right? And with them, we will start thinking, okay, what's the actual cost breakdown of this new packaging? Or we can, by ourselves, go directly to the vendors of packaging, because there are probably few in the world that are used by any other cosmetic company, right?
It is, I don't know.
Yeah, the big ones, right? So we can speak with them, and with this information, we can go to cosmetic companies, right?
Okay. We can talk to both the producers and the vendors and try to understand how it works. Okay. So this would be related to the costs and also for the durability of the material, I guess.
So what I will do, I will duplicate your sticky, and I'm gonna put vendors of packaging,
Okay.
right? Because we can speak. You can leave yours.
Okay. I can. No, okay. Good.
Because we can do both, right? On the one hand, we can speak with the producers of cosmetics. On the other hand, in parallel, we can speak to the actual producers of packaging.
Yeah.
Hi guys.
Hello.
How are you doing? I've listened to your conversation a bit. So you are imagining, like your positioning is you're a startup trying to do this as a new business model, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Yeah.
I'm just asking because it's of course different if are you a cosmetics producer or are you a startup? You're a startup. That's good. Yeah, so you need.
We haven't actually
didn't
actually
discuss.
agreed on this. We're just going with the fly. It's going so quickly that there are probably many questions we haven't asked ourselves.
But I think we are a startup actually,
Yeah.
because we
startup,
kind of discuss. Yeah.
So I think the challenge for you then may be because when you go to normal producers of cosmetic packaging, this will be one-time cosmetic packaging, right? But you want to create something that is very nice, very refillable and reusable. And you also want this like a very nice setup thing where you can refill and reuse. So it's not the normal producer of packaging for cosmetic products. It's maybe a design office or it's somebody doing durable packaging, but for other segments. So you're in a new field here a bit. Or you
Can I ask you?
Yes.
Do you know, because I don't know how it works at the moment, but I thought maybe some companies, they even produce both the creams and the packaging. I don't know. Are these different actors?
I mean, so usually like at my, where I worked as a company, we had packaging designers internally, but most of the time packaging design is outsourced to a design agency who are extremely good in doing packaging design. And that is sort of their, I remember they did something for me once and I had to put on gloves before I removed it from the box. So it's very perfectionist. And it is those packaging experts who work with the customer, and the customer says, those are my requirements, that's what I would like to have. And then the agent, like the design office, would develop something.
Okay.
But
because I was thinking, for example, if you imagine L'Oreal, so they might outsource as well, I guess.
Usually L'Oreal as well. Usually they develop they do the packaging development, either internal designers or external designers. It doesn't matter so much. But then the production is usually with a third-party company, which produces us based on their specs, and then it's filled.
Okay.
But they do have internal experts, of course, inside too, who know.
So then we write designers.
Designers, and you, of course, also have packaging producers who will then produce based on your specs,
Yeah.
But maybe don't spend too much time on actors. Just think about which actions you have to do as well. And then you can always put in the actors later. The actions are the important part for now.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. You want to move on to another one?
Sure.
Which one?
To the middle section, right? So
Okay.
customer preferences for aesthetics. Let's take easy one, customer's preference for aesthetics. So I will do actual consumer preference research. So
hey, how are you guys doing?
I think we're doing all right.
Having a quiet moment?
Getting more and more complicated. As we're starting to connect arrows, we're like, uh-oh.
You're trying to establish relationships between what's going on.
Well, we were having a discussion about like how to prevent students from taking too many things, and then is it a deposit or is it are students paying enough so that they want to keep the item, they can keep the item? And so then we made the connection between the deposit amounts, and it could be more affordable if we found partners in retail that were like for clearance. And so, but then we started saying, well, then we would need to connect back to marketing because the materials themselves, maybe a company would give us a coffee machine for cheaper if they were getting in front of students, and maybe their brand wasn't something students knew about.
Okay, yeah, that's really cool. So you're having a lot of good ideas on how to get appliances cheaper and to sort of do cross-brand marketing almost. That's a cool action.
I think we're having trouble staying on the step that we're supposed to be on without thinking of all of the things, the implications.
And this is fine because I think if you realize in the process of it, oh, there's another constraint, or oh, there's another, don't worry about the icons for now. Like the icons can come in the next step. But if you realize, oh, actually, this cross-brand marketing is a requirement, and we need to think about this requirement and unwrap all the constraints, you can go there. Especially if you have more time.
I'm slamming
I
out.
leave you to it, and we'll meet in a minute or so in the main room.
2 seconds.
Thanks, Anna.
Yeah, you have 60 seconds. I extended it a bit.
Maybe too by registering and choosing your item.
Actually, I think I saw you at AOM at the design science session.
Yeah,
So
actually, yeah. I remember your face somehow.
I think we were sitting close to each other.
Yeah. I did a few of them. That's right. Cool. Welcome back, everybody. I saw it's getting messy now, which is good. Messiness is part of it. And now we are heading towards our fourth and quite central step of our workshop. So let me share my screen again. So a few of you have already started putting the icons, but that's now when we have officially arrived, step 4, matching the actions to innovation modes. So what are innovation modes? Innovation modes rely on complexity theory. The practitioners of you may know Cunewin, for example, as a model. Essentially, innovation modes say that how we do innovation and how we do change really depends on our context. Sometimes we may have a clear best practice, which is already there, and we can just copy. Sometimes things may be a bit more complicated, but there's a good practice how to do it. And sometimes things may be highly complex and highly emergent and very uncertain, and that's our complex innovation mode. So if we want to define these, a very short definition would be for a best practice, there is usually something like a clear guidance from your industry, or you can copy a competitor and you'll be good. For a good practice, you usually know what your goal is, and you can bring experts to advise on how to get to this goal, like here, how to build a rocket. You couldn't do it alone, right? But you still know the goal. And here in complex emergent practice, I've put the baby because you have really no clue how a baby will develop, and you just sort of follow with the flow and take small steps and see what happens. And the same attitude you can take towards your project. It's emergent and you don't know the final goal. When to choose which innovation mode is quite important. It's particularly important because most of us, as we go through our professional life, are trained either in clear and complicated. So we are used to relatively ordered environments with a clear goal and clear milestones to advance. Or if we are entrepreneurs, startups, to this complex emergent practice where we are constantly juggling things are unknown, and we are just learning by doing. The Ish Union ecosystem, as we are building now here, is that quite often we have actually to combine both. Certain things may be best practices already existing. Other things may be complicated, but they need expertise and good structured project management. And others may be still emerging because there's too many unknowns, tensions, and you cannot use analysis and simulations to solve it. So those are our 3 domains at which we will have a look. Let's look at our example again. So in order to define our business model, we already said that we will need a lot of testing, experimentation, and iterations. The business model is highly uncertain. So I've put this icon, the iteration things. For complex, it's an emergent practice. For number 2, copy competitor best practice, that's something, it's a best practice. It's quite easy to do. You just look at the materials the competitor is using. Maybe he or she has put all the details on his or her website because they're certified, and you can just copy. The same if you're just using certified materials where suppliers are clearly defined. This would be best practice. In our relatively full field down here, we do have some complicated practices with a star. That includes our hygiene question, where we may need an expert audit in order to get all our legislative requirements right. Here, in convincing our customers, I have actually put 2 icons. I have the iterative part and the star, because we do know how to do a marketing campaign. And if we hire a marketing expert, he will probably do a good practice marketing campaign. But essentially, we don't know if and how this will work. So after the marketing campaign has been run, we will need to step out, to iterate, to try different things. So essentially, a field could also be both sometimes. And also remember that we had a bit of a tension between our return field and onboarding our customers. So also here, and this is why this one is also cycling here, iterating, we need to resolve the tension. How do we convince customers to join, but still to return the stuff? How do we resolve the tension? And tensions are usually solved through iterations, experimentation, and action. And that's your task, your actually last interactive task for today, because I would like you to ask you to step back into the rooms. And again, you have 10 minutes to think about the blue actions you have just identified and assign your icons to the actions to see where do you have a best practice, where will you need to iterate and experiment, and where do you have a good practice. And maybe if you have time, you can also think about how do these actually connect, and how would you go about it if you had to implement it. So any questions on this step? It's a bit more intensive on input, but you have all the definitions also on your boards, and I'll open the rooms then. How are you guys doing on that one?
Really good, I think. It's
okay.
Now we're already ready, right?
You're ready. Okay, well then if you're ready, you can spend the time and talk about the interactions and think about which are the actions you would do first, and maybe do you want to experiment first, or do you want to do the best practice, and how would it affect your activities? Because we don't have time today to actually build out a full action plan, but it will give you a bit of you can prioritize your action and think about which would be the first one, the sequence, and what kind of output would you expect from each action.
Sounds good. So these interactions that you're mentioning are temporal, right? It's like basically what we do first, what we do next, and how these things
connect. It's mainly
connect.
temporal, but of course, temporality may also affect some other things. You could also now zoom out and think about your wider ecosystem stuff that you mentioned, right? So,
yeah,
but it's mainly plan, to build out a plan. Yes.
Yes, perfect.
Yes, great.
Practices existing out there, right?
Yes, but when it comes to hiring someone, I've done it many times, so I know how this plays out. And it's never an exact step-by-step procedure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you have to deviate, sometimes you have to twist a little bit because you are dealing with a particular type of a person. So, but there are good practices for reacting to something unexpected during the interview. So for me,
So you would put the
hiring
star.
someone is not a best practice clear procedure.
So you would put the star?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, guys. How are you doing?
Hi.
I hear you're having interesting conversations because
And
the
these
method,
are the most interesting.
when we use the method in larger groups of professionals who are actually working together, that is the interesting part, right? When one says, oh, that's easy, and then the expert says, oh, no, it's not. So you are sort of simulating this.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I guess we need to also agree on what we mean with best practice and clear, I guess, because maybe we have different understanding also.
Yeah.
But good, I just put the stars. Then we can go to the third level.
Okay.
Interview vendors and packages. No, vendors of packages and vending machines.
Hi.
I think we're feeling good about our icons.
How are you guys doing with that one?
I think
You're done?
I think we're done with these ones, yeah.
It's been so productive. Any questions? Any things that arose where you weren't sure?
No, I think the process overall is very helpful in thinking about mapping all of the pieces together and then thinking about them in these like concentric circles.
Okay, cool. If you have some time left, you still have 3 minutes, you can think about how would you prioritize. So what would you do first? What would you do next? And how do those experiments and those best practices maybe connect to each other? Where would you go? And are there any tensions, relations? So prioritize and imagine you're trying to build a plan.
Got it. Thanks, Anna.
Thank you for bearing with this exercise. I would like to just show you step 5. We will not do it today interactively, simply because step 5 is something which makes a lot of sense if you're in a professional project in a real environment and you have actually mapped out all your actions. But I think for today, it's too much. Some of you have tried it a bit in your rooms already, as I heard. So essentially, step 5 is about prioritizing what is the most important. So here in our example, we said, well, we need to have a cup, number 1. We need to really comply with legislation, number 2. And we need to start building partnerships, number 3. And then we can think about how to go about it and actually build out an action plan. You have a small example here, and this is more or less a template which we would in similar ways adapt and use with practitioners. Sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's shorter, depending on time. But we would look into which actions are there. What is our desired outcome? And this one is important because for the emergent practice, it's maybe just learning about something, like getting to grips with an uncertainty. But for this best practice, it's really having a physical cup in our hands. And we can define little implementation steps and also actors who does what. This, in a nutshell, was the method. Now this was really more a bit of a dry run, right? And it was very fast. But normally, if you do use it in a professional environment, where it's useful is also to integrate different perspectives. Already now in your conversations, there was a bit of conversation around, yes, but is it really simple? No, it's actually not so simple to onboard people and to find partners or to find designers. How would we go about it? So it's having this discussion around different perspectives. It's also about structural gaps, finding where you may need additional partners or do additional actions you have not considered. It is also about thinking about relationships, what is going on across the ecosystem and how does it connect. And especially if we work with practitioners from larger organizations, it also brings probing and pilots into focus in a different way, because quite often those people are like, oh, all this experimentation and probing, it's like all this agile stuff is just bullshit. And it makes agile more sort of hands-on and shows where do we really need to learn. And essentially also hopefully developing an action plan. That was in a very short time, a fast forward of collective action planning. I would like to leave you now to a bit of a longer coffee break, 15 minutes. But please, while you're on coffee break, also take some time and fill out a feedback survey, because this is part of a design science study, which has been ongoing now for actually 4 years. And I would love if you click on the link and fill out the survey and share your positions. And then we will meet again here at 4:15 to have a discussion around how you experience it, what your takes away are, and how it may connect to your work and the work of the lab. People are still working. So welcome back. If you are back, please switch on your camera so we know you're with us. And if you're still stuck in the survey, maybe you can fill it out directly after the workshop. So before we move into conversation, I actually wanted to move you out of the fast forward mode, because I feel that the fast forward mode can feel a bit hectic sometimes and there's a lot going on. So maybe we can just take a few seconds to actually lean back and close your eyes or look at nature, if you can see nature out of your window, or something, a nice picture, something you may have in your office, and just breathe really deeply and quietly a few times to not be in this fast forward mode anymore and to wind down. And as you breathe, maybe think about what is the one takeaway, the one question, the one idea out of the session today you would like to share with others in this group. And if you feel like you would like to start and share, just start. Peter.
I will repeat what I shared already with my colleague in my breakout room, and that is the one thing that I'm taking away with me is that it's much better to introduce something new. In this case, introduce the complexity theory or systems thinking. It's much better to do it after establishing a solid understanding foundation, which is built with participants using their familiar terms, concept, etc. So that's what I'm taking away with me.
How does it relate to your work, to what you have done today? Was there a disconnect in terms of what you understood the terms to be?
No, not at all. I will now consider the next time I conduct my workshop or training, I will remember this experience from today, and I will try to first establish a common understanding of whatever we'll be doing with participants, but using their familiar terms, concepts, theories.
Okay, thank you.
And then once this foundation is established, I can then introduce systems thinking, because that's what I do. I build competency for systems thinking.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Domenico.
Yes, so thanks. And I think that the first thing that comes to my mind in terms of what I've learned today from this exercise is that it really gave me a sense about how a more engineering mind works compared to a social scientist that I feel I am. I really enjoyed working on something more, let's say, narrower than usually what I do in my practice, and that brings us to talk quite in the short term about products, materials, and the ecosystems connected to that. That was very revealing for me. So on my notebook, I wrote Eureka, because that's really that is I don't have that experience often. So fantastic.
I saw this comment in the service saying difference between engineering and social scientist mind, and I was wondering if it came from an engineer or a social scientist. So thank you. TJ.
Yes, I think my piece kind of builds off of what Domenico just shared, in that I lead a lot of professional learning across the United States. We're in 29 different states where we lead professional learning sessions. And so one of the pieces that I don't think a lot about are we believe you should do real science and have real materials. And so we do ship science materials for people to do real lab investigations. And so this was really helpful for me thinking. Often I'm thinking about the curriculum and about the facilitation and the delivery, but this today allowed me to think through the materials and how do we make more sustainable kits. And I think one of the takeaways is that by having potentially local hubs where the materials could be more reusable or sustainable. My center is very small. There's only 3 of us that lead it, but we've worked with 16,000 educators, and so trying to think through a more sustainable approach to the materials. This was really, really helpful to, like Domenico said, think with an engineering lens in a social science kind of context.
Cool.
So thank you.
Thank you. And if you'd like, sorry, I closed the window. There's a bit of sound. If you'd like to explore it a bit more for your concrete projects, I'm also happy to share more materials on circularity thinking as a big toolkit, because normally you would really start with mapping waste and only then go towards solutions and actions, which would put you in context. So if you'd like to do this, we are always also looking out for partners to pilot things, to test things, to implement. So our students to do the master thesis, so reach out. Who else would like to share your takeaways, reflections, maybe also questions or criticism? Open to anything. Rosada?
I just wanted to share, I think the facilitation was really well done. It was really clear, even though I don't work with products and stuff, but I think the steps were clear, the way you moved across the the Miro board, the group work, and going back and forth. I think it was really well structured for people that maybe also are not familiar with the concept. So
Okay,
thank you.
Maybe if there's no reflections anymore, I would like to drop a design question into the room asking what if. So what if you connected this to the work you may already be doing? Domenico had a why question instead of what if. I replied to it. Why do you call it collective action planning? It's a good question. I have renamed it quite a few times. So happy to take this maybe to a longer conversation. And if you feel there are other suitable names, let me know. So what if you linked it to your work and to things you're currently doing? Maybe not necessarily the full scope of it, but some parts, maybe using different systems maps or using just some steps of the method. What is it that you would use and how could you link it? What are your thoughts on that?
And we should discuss now, right? Like we should
Yeah.
open our mic and discuss.
Yeah, just.
Actually, like, yeah, just to add on what Domenico is like, yeah, it's like an interesting take to what we normally like and the kind of stuff we've had like presented over time here. And I feel like, yeah, I think having these diverse ways of like doing things or like even like tools that like we use for doing systems thinking, I think like, yeah, it's really like an interesting concept and also like adds to some of the work that we've seen already presented here. I feel like for me, basically what I'm doing, because I'm trying to use systems thinking as part of like thinking more on policy implementation processes. And like, yeah, also like thinking about tools that we can use for a new course that we are developing. So I think all these things are really like important, and sharing this also like allows people to really come up with their own hybrids. And I've had this discussion with Domenico, like you borrow from different places, the facilitation styles and all those things. So yeah, really like interesting concept, and thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you. In the early stages of developing the tool, we also used it for a policy lab. But the challenge of using it for a policy lab, I think, was that first people had to agree on a solution. So what is the solution they actually want to pilot? And this conversation of integrating perspectives on which materials and like it was supposed to be built environment, which part of it and where do we want to focus, actually was a key cornerstone before we could move towards the lab. So that was a key takeaway at that point.
So I think in our case, like I'm lucky, but also like it's a curse at the same time. Like we are already like have like a law that has been passed, and what we are trying to do is help like the local authorities like roll it out. And some like, yeah, as you said, sometimes it can be very contentious on what different people want, but sometimes I feel rather than be afraid, it's just like, yeah, try to think what could be the opportunities. There will always be negatives and like issues and constraints that we'll have to deal with, but I feel like with this kind of system thinking tools, actually they provide like an opportunity for us to start the conversation, and that's the most difficult bit. And I feel with conversation, then you can choose like, okay, we have these areas where we agree, and then like try to figure on areas that we don't agree. Then what is like I'm trying to use it like nowadays, what will be the least bitter pill that you can give somebody?
Okay. So we have tried using it with German public authorities and municipalities. And the interesting part is that circular economy is so context dependent, right? So what may work in like one environment will be completely like maybe negative, actually have negative consequences in a different environment. But it was not always easy, I have to admit, to bring municipality people on our side to work with systems thinking. So for us, a big part of it then was also translating it into tools that people are more familiar with and that they actually may use in their everyday job, but still retaining the systems perspective. So we went from those mapping where some people participated who were very eager and brought expertise into translating it into more familiar formats in order for it to be adapted by local municipalities. Domenico.
Yeah, in terms of your what if question, what if we integrate the CAP into current practice? What I'm thinking is that the way it would look like is that we could give, I mean, it's just imagining, okay, based on your question, it's like we give the choice to participants to to discuss a problem based on their lived experience. So that's what we usually do in our practice. But then we also give the opportunity, if the participants prefer, to start thinking about a product that relate to a complex problems that they want to tackle. And that could be the collective action planning. And then by leaving the choice to different participants, what I found what I would love to test is whether actually they come up with different or similar business models to be developed, and and different actions that underpin that business model development, because those are very different ways of thinking, like problem driven versus solution driven. So anyways, I think that there is a lot of potential for experimentation.
Okay, cool. And I think Garima also raised her hand before.
Yeah, I had a similar idea to what Domenico said, like since it's context driven, so different people in different systems may have different solutions, like they might not be seeing things as we are. So like what you had, like being in collaborative. So that's similar to what Domenico said. I wanted to bring upon that.
Yeah, in exercises to exemplify the role of context, I sometimes use the same product but give different context to students. So I say it's a printer, but it's a printer in a house, it's a printer in a like in an office, or it's a printer in a coffee shop. And the things move, like the whole focus switches. So it's something you can practice for practicing. In real life projects, there's always so much detail of lived experience, as you said, and it's so important to take it into account. So one thing I'd like to do here at some point is to see how that type of thinking can accompany longer innovation processes where people actually return to it over and over again to see how constraints shift and how the actions shift based on what they have actually experienced and learned in the field. So, Garima.
Yeah, so I had a question based on that. Like, how do you bring people together to get on the one goal? Since they are two different systems, they have different goals in their mind. So how do you get to reduce the friction between those two systems when they're working together? Sometimes they might not see eye to eye.
Maybe I just close the session officially because I know it's half past and Peter had to leave, but feel free to stay on and continue the conversation. But I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who joined. It was really a pleasure of working with you today here. And I've also learned a lot from your conversations and your interaction in the rooms. So thank you also for your feedback. And please reach out if you want a closer exchange and you want to learn more. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Nice seeing you all. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye. And Garima, to your question, how do we link across perspectives? I feel like that this is something which you can only do in personal conversations and over a certain duration of time. So, and also asking the right questions almost, and building trust in different ways. I don't know, because I haven't attended many of the sessions of the lab, because usually it's at a time when I have to pick up my kids. So I don't know how much you talked about tensions. I think the question, where do the tensions in the room come from? Where does the lack of trust come from? And is it more just from having different perspectives that we can align, or is it really more is it driven socially from something deeper, plays an important role. Sometimes if it's just we enter with different expectations, articulating things towards each other can already help to say, oh, actually, yeah, I've never seen it from this perspective. So let's try to put myself in your shoes. In practitioner workshops, we usually try to consciously put people from different parts of the value chain and also policymakers or NGOs in the room to really have those different perspectives. And I find that's where this method is also more powerful because it can start people on this journey of, oh, I've never seen it like this, but I'd be willing to adapt to it. But it requires a certain kind of openness and a certain kind of trust in the room.
Okay, thank you.
I have one quick thing that I would share and I know this kind of goes against all of the openness and the trust and the collaboration, like all of those things assumed. I was just at a very interesting conference at the University of Cambridge on dialogic education, and we were in a strand around AI, and our group was really pushing to think about like, basically we were very critical of it and saying, what could it be good for? I had created a tool based on research on like what good science coaches do as they're teaching. But in looking at some of the other tools, especially around kind of dialogic education, I could see an application here that might be an interesting exploration for people who don't have a lot of groups or people to kind of push their thinking. It would be very easy and I think interesting to build a tool that pushes through kind of your way, Anna, of sharing the thinking. Have you thought about this piece or that piece? And so I wonder if that's an application here to have almost a little mini thought partner that could help you push your own thinking as you're trying to do this. If assuming that real humans are better, but having a tool that 24/7 you'd be able to interact with that might help push you to a better place, pre-workshop. Maybe this is before a workshop starts. It gets your thinking primed. Like that could be really interesting and an interesting kind of design space to experiment with.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. I think it really depends on your use case. So normally the kind of engagements we have are with larger groups like cross-sectoral partnerships, which are working on something, but they are not aligned. And there it is sort of this alignment and integration which takes paramount. But I have been exchanging with some people who are doing work on how to use design approaches with AI and also thinking about, can you do design thinking alone? Can you do that type of thing in a small entrepreneurial team? So I think as a support background input, it can be quite useful to prepare things. But the moment you are in a room with many people, AI is just one part of the conversation, sort of, but it can be useful to create an additional perspective, especially if you're like a solopreneur or only have a small group of people and you are trying to explore a space. Absolutely, it can be translated into prompts. Rosella.
I have a question. So when you do this with like in the settings with cross-sector participants or groups or stakeholders, do you kind of do the same process we did today? And if you do that, do you group them like in mixed groups, or do you do it for sectors and then you kind of discuss after and see the different perspectives?
So this is design science, and essentially I differentiate between demonstrations and evaluations. Demonstrations for me is something like we are doing today, where I may have a seminar with practitioners or students, and you're not working on a real case. When we are working on a real case, to be honest, it really depends on what does the real case need, because I cannot push something onto my partners which they don't require at this moment in time. So I would think about which part of the tool do I need to test? because quite often maybe I have been working on one part of it. For example, those 3-layered structure is something that evolved organically out of observing conversations at the partners and seeing, okay, they keep on moving between actions and constraints and how to address the constraints, and it's quite unstructured, and it would help them to bring a structure into the conversation. So sometimes it's observing what's going on at the partner and picking up their problem and really building on it. And then you've asked if it's cross-sectoral or if we group them by sectors. It depends. So we had projects which were naturally grouped by sectors. So for example, our last project was on flat glass recycling, and it had people from everywhere across the value chain in the room. So it was like a natural fit, and it wasn't our grouping, it was the partner. But we also had a project on circular procurement for any kind of sector. And there it was important to realize what are the products most interesting to our audience. And then we have selected some products which were most interesting, but also could create most learning. So we had some durable products, we had some fast-moving products, and we sort of tried to align where we as experts think the group would take most learning with what is most interesting to them in practical terms. See a few posts, like a web summit.
Oh yeah, we are just I was just intrigued by possible AI applications and limitations of this type of tools, especially in terms of epistemologies, like which type of knowledge you're really mobilizing when doing this with AI, and there can be pros and cons, of course. And probably we need to be aware of the challenges, but there's a lot of potential as well.
Yeah, I think the prompts would also be different depending on your epistemology, which also makes it very interesting, almost as an experiment in itself, because if you're a realist and you think, oh, there's reality out there and AI gives me the right answers, it will be very different. When I'm coming from a pragmatism stance, it's almost like, well, there is no right answer, and the process is actually what's important and the alignment in the process. But of course, still AI can give me some additional perspectives I may not have considered. So it's still very important input. So your questions would change. I find that an interesting idea.
Sadly.
Yeah.
So depending on the tools that we apply, like say, for example, the collective action planning tool, or causal loop diagramming, or others, your scripts evolve, of course. And then if you are aware of which epistemology you are basing your thinking, you're grounding your thinking, then you can ask better scripts. And then I think that there is potential to develop something by putting together tools, epistemologies to write better scripts. So anyways, that's very fascinating.
Yeah, we were using it. I have a course on sense making. I just put out this book on making sense of sense making. And so my brain went there because we were just thinking about what makes sense making different within the engineering space, and what kind of questions do you ask, rather than when you're trying to figure out some sort of phenomena in the kind of a scientific phenomenon. And I was really intrigued by how it was like very different kinds of questions that the students were coming up with. And so I built this little like engineering thing that pushes them to think about the science behind all of their engineering challenges. And so students had like a coffee cup that was leaking, and they kept asking questions that were about like a solution. But when it pushed them to learn more about the actual core science idea behind it, they weren't as intrigued. They just wanted a quick fix solution. And so it was a very interesting kind of exercise, because the othering of the AI tool allowed us to, like, as a collective, critique this direction that the students were heading, And it was something that I never could have done pedagogically without having this like third space entity. I don't know what to even really call it, this silly thing. But then we had just talked about immediately ChatGPT started selling tools to students, and that started a whole nother conversation of like how it's not a language model, it's now trying to sell them coffee makers and all of these things.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super fascinating. I think that we should discuss more.
One of the 5 top papers I've put on there is actually a sense-making paper by Colville, because it has also informed this method quite a lot. So I definitely see there's a strong link to sense-making, and maybe
Love
the
it.
of systems and AI is generally something which is interesting for a different session.
Yes.
And because the thing, there's a lot of potential and a lot of pitfalls.
Yeah.
So it's quite fascinating.
Yeah, so
thank
thank you.
you.
Actually, like we'll recommend this one to entrepreneurship network where like occasionally I participate in, and I think it's could be a really interesting tool for the group. It's a group called Fast Forward 2030. So they like work with local entrepreneurs trying to sort local issues in their place where they come from, mostly like in global south. So will be something interesting really to share, because I liked like the whole thought process behind it. I just hope like we'll have like access to the Miro board a little bit later. Like I'll just try to check on what I may have missed. So thank you.
I'll leave the Miro board on, so please feel free to play around with it a bit more or put your own products. Feel free.
All right.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Thank you so much, Anna.
Thank you for having me, for hosting this.
Yes, it was fantastic. And then, of course, we can discuss more tomorrow here in Montpellier.
See you in the next session.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all.
Bye.
Ciao. Bye-bye.